bought this Vermont Castings Encore stove after shivering through our first winter in this house. It's by far the best investment we have made in regards to increasing the comfort through the winter months. Even though we're very happy with the stove, it is not without some problems. We have a stovetop temperature gauge, and we adjust the air as needed according to the gauge to keep the temperature in the range that we want. Unfortunately, it seems like on random occasions the stove will start roaring loudly and seem like it's burning out of control. We've never had any actual problems, but it is pretty disconcerting and prevents us from leaving the stove running overnight, or if we're not around to kind of keep an eye on it in case it decides to take off without us knowing. Some internet research confirmed that our experience is not unique. These stoves have a reputation for being difficult to operate properly. In that research, I came across a forum post describing a temperature monitor that somebody made using a Raspberry Pi computer. I decided I'd like to try to build one for myself. First, I had to mount a temperature probe in the stovepipe. This is double wall pipe, and I wanted to get the most accurate temperature possible. So I purchased a K-type thermocouple with a compression fitting and mounted that about 18 inches from the stove exit. I also installed another K-type thermocouple in the rear of the stove to replace the factory temperature gauge for the catalyst. I always found the factory gauge to be practically useless since it doesn't show any numbers and required peeking behind the stove with a flashlight in order to even see the thing. I bought a Raspberry Pi computer, a thermocouple card from a website called Pi Plates, and a plastic case to assemble it all. I had one minor issue with assembly. Some of the pins in the thermocouple board were touching the USB port on the Raspberry Pi. I trimmed the extra length off the pins and put some clear tape over the USB port to prevent an electrical short. This seems to be working fine now. After building the assembly, I found a spot on a side table near the stove to set it on. The thermocouples I purchased came with mini connectors on them, but the input card requires just bare wires. I simply removed these connectors, so I just had the bare wires to plug in. I'm not going to bore you with the details of setting up the Raspberry Pi for the first time. This was a learning experience for me. I never did this before, and it definitely took me a couple days to figure out how to even turn it on and get it connected to Wi-Fi and install the proper software. There's plenty of videos online from more knowledgeable people than myself about how to do that. I'm using a program called Node-RED to read the temperature data, process it, and provide some feedback so we know what the stove is doing. I have set up some triggers in the software to provide visual like pop-ups and auditory alerts when temperatures either get too high or it cools down and requires more wood. It also plots 12 hours of data history so we can see how the temperature is trending, whether it's heading up or down, and whether we should be paying attention to it or, putting more wood in soon or whatever. So I still have the stovetop temp, just for reference. can see we have the wires from the 2 sensors. That one's really hard to see back in the dark there, but coming over here, and here is the dashboard from Node Red. Sorry about the glare. And that gives us real-time feedback on what everything is doing. Give us alerts. It'll be like a little pop-up on the screen, and it also will speak to us to say, you know, stove temp too high, time to reload. There's a few of them. So overall, we're very happy with this. It's really been beneficial to understand how the stove runs, what happens when we put wood in, and it's actually, we've caught a couple, I'll call them like runaways, where the stove gets suddenly like really hot, you know, starts roaring. We've caught those earlier and been able to slow it down before it got scary like it has in the past. So I think, I don't know that something like this is 100% necessary for, you know, everybody, but especially with these Vermont Castings stoves, it seems like it's pretty common that they're challenging to operate, and I think a probe in the flue at the minimum should be required, even just if it's a gauge. But this has been an awesome upgrade, and also makes us feel a lot more comfortable, you know, being able to load it and know that we're not gonna, you know, get out of control. We're gonna see it here before anything crazy happens. This also lets us run it more consistently. You can see these temperatures are pretty consistent because I'm able to see that and reload a little bit at a time, as opposed to letting it cool down. The lag on this stovetop temp is so long that the stove would actually get quite cool, and then we would reload it and then it would go crazy. This keeps it as a much more even temperature, even if this isn't necessarily showing that it needs to be reloaded. You know, we can see the fire might be getting low, and we can see the temperatures start to cool down. That would indicate that it's time to put more wood in. So, thanks for watching. If you got any questions, please, you know, let me know, send a message. There's a lot of details that I kind of skipped over. Thanks for watching.